Hello and welcome to The Defender, Wisconsin's environmental podcast. I'm Amy Barrilleaux. The Defender is powered by Clean Wisconsin, your environmental voice since 1970. It's happening in every corner of Wisconsin: Cassville, Menomonie, Superior, Madison, Crosse County, Dane County, Westport, Manitowoc County, Door County. Communities all over the state are passing moratoriums and ordinances aimed at stopping what a year ago seemed unstoppable: the unchecked flood of AI data centers into our state.
I think this issue could save democracy. I really do, because it is one that the people are behind and they're getting angrier and angrier about.
In this episode, who is pushing this avalanche of local action, and will it be enough to stem the environmental harms already unfolding because of AI data centers? That's right now on The Defender. You might not realize it, but at this moment, there's probably somebody in Wisconsin on a Signal chat working on the next local vote about AI data centers. A year ago, my guest in this episode was just a regular guy living in Menomonie, and now he's part of a movement, a big one. Some background. Last fall, amid growing public concern, the mayor of Menomonie told tech company developers that he was not going to pursue a development agreement for a $1.6 billion AI data center. Now the city has passed a new ordinance aimed at restricting where and how AI data centers can be built. Joining me is Blaine Halverson, who helped lead the push for that ordinance and is connecting with people all over the state and country who are staring down the pressure campaigns of some of the most powerful companies on the planet. Blaine, thank you so much for being here.
Good to be here.
When you heard a year ago now about plans for an AI data center in your community, what were some of the concerns that you and your neighbors started to have?
Well, I mean, I think there were more people who had dug in a little bit on it already, and knew more, and they were concerned about water. They were concerned about their wells. I think part of the challenge with these in Wisconsin is that most of them are getting built in cities and villages, but they're on land that wasn't part of the city and village before, right? So they're co-opting and annexing rural land. And so the people who are most affected are the neighbors there, who are people who are just living in the country one day, right? And now they're not. And now they're going to be forced to deal with the consequences of the construction alone, which is a special kind of hell. If you talk to people in Beaver Dam and Port Washington and Mount Pleasant. So I think that, I was also very bothered by that. I was bothered that the people in Red Cedar, town of Red Cedar, did not know that their land was going to be annexed. And they were sitting in meetings, right, with our like quarterly city town plan meetings where they have the two adjoining towns and the city get together and talk over things. And I looked back and saw two consecutive meetings where someone asked about rumors, and our representatives from the city, who was on an NDA, didn't say a word to them about it. Just kind of brushed it aside. So that bothered me. And that was like one of the first actions I took, was sending an email to each of the town board chairs and clerks, just to make them aware of what was happening, because I wanted to make sure it was on their radar.
So that project that many believe was going to be a meta AI data center kind of fizzled out. The developer went away. You've got a new ordinance now. Why then are you still involved in all this? Why not just, go home, take a nap, say I won and move on? Why still work on this issue?
Well, two reasons. Number one, because it's not over. Our mayor listened to the people, and he had a letter sent to the developer back in September that said, we're not interested in pursuing a TID at this time, which is kind of generally a kind of a pin to the balloon, right?
Mhm.
In the sense that that's what they want. They want anything they can get that's going to mitigate their risk and put the risk on the little community instead. That's what they're going for. But it doesn't mean it's over, because what he did in that pause didn't really have any necessarily legal basis that I've been able to encounter, but they did seem to kind of go away. And then in the meantime, we passed an ordinance that established a new zone that is the only place a data center can be built in Menomonie, and the land that they own is not in that zone. So they still own the land, and I think they're going to hang on to it and probably just kind of keep feeling the temperature politically, because political winds can change really fast in local politics.
Yeah.
And they're not concerned with what the people here think. They're only concerned with what the people who make the decision think. So it could still rekindle. I feel pretty confident that that we've got it in hand, but I don't know. But what happened is, in the meantime, after we passed that ordinance, then there was a question of how much, what are they asked the community, what other protections do you want in this ordinance? And they had an open period of that. And so I organized a town hall myself with a bunch of people to come in, and we put together a resolution of it turned out to be 42 things that we would like to see in that ordinance, and collected signatures on that, collected about 1,000. And then at that point, that was all there was to do. Right now is now wait for them to complete their work on the draft ordinance amendment. But in the meantime, I had connected with people from across the state in the other communities via Signal, in a Signal chat, and that became a real school for all of us. And I think part of the reason we're getting more and more successful in the state of getting into these things early is because of what we taught each other about each other's situations.
Well, so I have a lot of questions. So first, what are some of the things that are going to be potentially in this ordinance, some of the 42 different things?
Oh, geez. Well, one of the big ones to me is just limiting the size of the buildings. You're just looking at, there's different ways that you could approach it, and every community is going to have a different approach. For some it's about deterrence, and for me it's about deterrence. I just don't want hyperscale development here. I don't think hyperscale is natural, and I think that it definitely isn't a natural fit for a rural community, or a small community in general. So that's one. And then again, acreage setbacks are a big one. How far are they set back from the road, the buildings? How far the noisiest elements, the cooling fans, cooling systems, whatever, how far are they from that? Sensitive receptors, which is another, just a way of saying like schools and food production locations and things like that, residences. So setbacks, greater distance setbacks. Water regulation, but with enforcement.
What do you mean by water regulation with enforcement?
I mean, you need to say, yeah, this is how much water you can use and no more, but you have to have a mechanism in place that allows you to enforce it. And a lot of ordinances don't. And the challenge is, when you're up against a company like that, they just start using the water they want to use. This is what's happened in many other places. And most communities don't have anything in place that allows them to do anything about it.
I want to explore that a little bit more, because, you've seen some legislation floated around in Wisconsin, and they always mention water use, and they're always like, we need to track how much water this data center is using. And, the reaction from a lot of folks is, well, what good does it do to just track it? If you've already got the data center built and using the water, then isn't that like 5 steps too late to actually protect our water? Is that kind of where you were thinking?
Well, yeah, but at the same time, now my whole the water usage thing is different in my mind now, because 70% of the water that gets used in the state of Wisconsin, 70% of the water draw is going toward power generation, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's what people need to understand. This is the straw that they're drinking out of at their data center is a small part of the problem. And what's most frustrating about that element right now is they do literally have, there are a couple companies that have really excellent closed loop technology but they don't use it because it's not cheap enough. It's too expensive.
I had not heard that.
And huh?
I had not heard that
Yeah.
they had the technology, but they weren't using it.
Yeah, there are places that do have the technology for sure. But what we've seen happen in some communities is they'll come in and they'll tell you it's going to be closed loop, right? And closed loop can mean whatever they want it to mean too. It just means there's a loop of something, right? It's not necessarily a true closed loop system, but there are some that are true closed systems that can operate on 20 to 30,000 gallons of water a day, or less. But again, this is about speed. This is about getting their data center up and running. This is about being first in a race. So they want to go cheap and they want to go fast. And they'll do whatever they need to do that. It's really an extraction business.
So you and people all across the state, you're on the Signal chat, you're thinking, okay, what can we put in this ordinance? What do we need to do to protect each other? Are you surprised that it's taking this, right? People, you're not a politician, you're not a, lawmaker or sitting on a board, or a regulator. It's taking people from all walks of life to kind of go, wait a minute, our resources are at risk here, our air, our water, our energy. What can we do? Because it's coming at us so fast. Are you surprised that it's taking this to actually get action against this kind of unchecked development?
Well, I'm not necessarily surprised in the sense that this was kind of a monster that came out of nowhere, right? Like for most of us, we weren't even aware of it being an issue or a thing. What's really funny is even when back in the spring of 24, our city staff pushed through a change in our zoning code that added a definition to warehouse that included digital data center as one of the definitions of a warehouse. So they're going to bat for the developer privately. No one knew it was even happening. The people in the council at the time who voted said, okay, but they didn't even know what the reason for it was. He just said we need a definition for warehouse. But oh no, I totally spaced on where that was going.
Well, I think you were talking about that you aren't surprised that it's taken this sort of like grassroots Signal chat to kind of be a backstop right now.
I think that's what I'm saying is that a year and a half ago, nobody knew. Like in that speech when he tried to get this through, he said, and then number 4 is this, the newfangledest of these are these digital data centers, and that's how he presented it. And to present it as newfangled meant he knew that people on that council didn't know what this was. So yeah, so I'm not surprised. I'm actually pleased at how uniting this has been. I've been saying to people, and some people think it's an exaggeration, but I really don't think it is, because it's so nonpartisan, right? And it's made up of people on all sides of the spectrum, and they have their own motivations for it. But I think this issue could save democracy. I really do, because it is one that the people are behind, and they're getting angrier and angrier about. And they're expecting more and more. And I mean, this behemoth that's going to be built in Utah is just making the entire nation angry. So
if you just look at the past year, we went from data centers kind of coming in and getting approved. You have, the Port Washington data center now under construction. You have Microsoft's first data center almost done, AI data center, plus I think 17, 18 more that are under construction in the Racine area. And it felt like, oh my gosh, data centers are just rolling in, and there's nothing that we can do. How different does it feel now, where you've got communities like, Menomonie about to, pass an ordinance with all these conditions? You've got other communities that are doing kind of the data center pause, like year pause or more. These things are starting to happen one after another.
It feels great. And we sat and thought about it one day. We're like the last one to actually get approved in the state, major one, Westport, Washington, right? Other than that, none of them have been approved yet, right? DeForest got stopped. The Grant County one is still a danger because they're just looking for the development corporation guy down there is just wants this data center, it seems like, and he's just trying to find a township that they can put it in. And meanwhile, at least 3 of the towns, maybe even 4, have taken village powers and have started to enact interim zoning to take control of their own zoning authority. And that's not a simple process to go through. So if they're willing to do it, but what that has done is start to create a little bit of a direction toward like some critical mass, I think. And then you see, I know a year ago, last fall, people were asking the county if they could do something, and they looked and discovered that there's in the statute, it basically says straight out that counties can't enact development moratoriums. But now what Manitowoc County did was they enacted something different, and it's a moratorium, but it's a moratorium on the administrative end. It's stopping the filing and processing of applications for data centers, right? So is an interesting thing because Dane County had looked at doing something and they had backed off and said we can't. And then Manitowoc County did this, right? Kind of said, hold my beer. And Dane County said, wait a second, what did they do? And they looked at it, and then all of a sudden they looked at it, and they must have had their lawyers look at it. I'm sure Dane County has good lawyers, right? And they said, yeah, this works. And Grant County, Cassville, town of Cassville was the first one to do it down there. And I just had a town of Dover in Barron County. I worked with them to get them into a moratorium. And there's another town called Town of Big Bend in Ladysmith who I've talked to. They haven't enacted theirs yet, but they told me they're going to be. The village of Baldwin up here enacted a moratorium a couple of weeks ago. So it's happening all over.
Yeah, it's almost like the opposite. Like this time last year, it was like I can't keep up with all the new data center proposals and projects that are happening all across Wisconsin, and now I feel like I can't keep up with all the action, all the ordinances and moratoriums that are happening across
Wisconsin. Fast and furious, yeah.
Do you think some of the turning point came when people really understood what that Port Washington data center was going to mean? I mean, Clean Wisconsin, it's probably been about a year ago since we came out with our analysis that just the first Microsoft data center and then the full build out of the Port Washington data center was going to use more energy, far more than all of the homes in the state combined, you know, and that's like, oh, wow, how big is this thing? Do you think when people started kind of digging into that project, they started to realize this is not normal?
Yeah, and I didn't like the way it went down, right? I mean, like, it was really sad to see a community just get ripped apart the way it was, right? And it was really came from, and that it was in Port and in Beaver Dam. There was a lot of contempt coming, it seemed like, from the public officials toward the people. A lot of hubris, which in retrospect is the worst kind of hubris. It's the one that was when an ignorant person thinks they've got it, right? And a lot of damage gets done, and that's definitely what happened in Port and in Beaver Dam. DeForest was going through the same kind of tearing thing. Things were getting torn apart in the community, and I think there's damage that's been done in all 3 of those communities that is going to be hard to repair. So I feel really lucky up here that we don't already have like trucks rolling in and ground being broken. And that doesn't mean it's completely stopped, but it's momentum. And so my mentality became, so what do I do now while this is in, and it just became, we had the statewide group, we had like 6 or 7 of us who got on a Zoom call with one of Governor Evers' policy directors in February. And we each kind of took our topic. Like there's a lot, people have become specialists in that group.
Yeah.
And it's really becoming a formal kind of statewide coalition under the Port Washington banner, Great Lakes Neighbors United. And I was going to talk about what they wanted me to talk about, which is zoning protections, because that's what my nerding out has been about mostly, which I never expected in my life. But coming up to it, I was like, there's nothing, none of our talks today are about something that really is a heart thing, right? And I started thinking about what I saw is that fundamentally what's happening here is these data centers are redefining and changing the complete character of the communities they come to. And started me thinking about how important just the idea of place is, that I actually changed what I was going to talk about, and that's what I talked about. I talked to the governor's policy director about the importance of place, and how a place belongs to its people, and the people belong to that place. And it's a relationship. And that kind of stuck with me over the following weeks. And then that's kind of what started to lead toward what we're doing now.
That reminds me of, I was watching a community meeting in DeForest about the data center that was being really pushed hard in Dane County. And this woman came up and said, to put this data center here means turning your back on the identity of this community, that we're a farming community, and you're saying that farming has no place here anymore. And I think that really strikes a chord with people because, it's not, as an organization that works to fight climate change, Clean Wisconsin supports wind and solar farms. That land stays in the farming family and can be farmed after the solar panels are taken away, or even plants can grow in among the solar panels for, grazing and things like that. But in this case, when you put a 700,000 square foot building on top of a concrete slab, you're not going to farm that land again. You're saying, no, we're not doing this anymore, basically.
Yeah. And that's, that was another thing that we want in that ordinance is a bond that to help, that would give the community the money to restore land, right?
Like a decommissioning kind of funds.
Right. And that is something that I think is absolutely essential in all of this, because these are buildings that will have no earthly use, right? I mean, I think I kind of jokingly said, in the climate crisis, there'll be people from New Orleans who have to move to Mount Pleasant and move into one of the abandoned data centers, right? Because where are you going to house those people when you have a climate crisis? And what are you going to do with that building? Those buildings, they're too big to even be a football stadium, right? I mean, I keep coming back to name one thing that you can think of where exponential growth is a good thing. I can't think of anything.
Yes. Done in a huge hurry, like as fast as possible.
Right. Right.
You mentioned that you think that this issue could save democracy, which is a big statement, but I think, your point about crossing, those divides that we've had in the United States for so long through a big issue resonates with a lot of people.
Yeah.
Have you found, because for organizations like Clean Wisconsin, we have big environmental concerns, right? We're worried about our water resources, our land resources, the air pollution that comes from all those backup diesel generators, and certainly the air pollution that comes from all the gas plants and coal plants that are being used to power these. So have you found anybody who maybe doesn't consider themselves an environmentalist, certainly, but somebody who's thinking, wait a minute, this is Wisconsin's resources here. I'm worried about these things that we need to live, our energy resources and our water resources, who maybe doesn't normally think that way.
Yeah. Well, here's my theory is this: when the whole dynamic changes in local politics, right? Like when our county instituted a wheel tax, that's an economic issue and a new tax. Everyone was against it. Most everybody was against it, right? But Um, so everybody is a fiscal conservative when it comes to their taxes, right? And everybody is an environmentalist when it comes to their hometown, home county, home state, even.
Yeah.
And I think that's the dynamic. And when I say that, when I say that it'll save democracy, I don't mean that it's going to be solved in this issue necessarily. But the issue is allowing us to discover that we have a lot more in common with the people that we've been deriding or have been deriding us, the people that we couldn't talk to, the people who we don't even regard as Christian or whatever. That's what it is. It's opening that door to actually work shoulder to shoulder with someone who you know you would never step in a voting booth and vote the same way. But in this, you're united because you realize you're neighbors, right? And this affects them. It affects you. It was being a part of that signal chat that changed my perspective because living way up here, like we're like the backyard of Wisconsin, right? In a way, like we're up here kind of keeping a buffer between the Vikings fans and the rest of Wisconsin. And they live amongst us. One is in this house with me right now.
Oh, okay.
But the idea of, Port Washington, Milwaukee, like they mattered to me, but they're so far away.
Yeah.
And they don't know anything about what happens up here. Like most people down there are completely unaware of what life is like here, right? It's a different speed. It's a different thing. So, but getting in that signal chat with those people from Port Washington, from Beaver Dam, from the forest, from Janesville, from Kenosha, and the number's been growing.
Yeah.
And you compare stories and you see what's similar, right? You see what's different and you learn from it, but it also really made Wisconsin feel small to me. Because I just started thinking of my state as my neighborhood, as a result of that interaction. And I think when we stop thinking of ourselves as opponents and we start seeing ourselves as neighbors, that's when things happen. And people have been saying it for years. When the rich and powerful, when we find out that we have power when we're together, that we have more power than they do when we're really together, things will change. It's happened throughout history. Yeah.
Is there a feeling of like, hey, wait a minute, these tech companies are coming in to our home and they're coming here, and Wisconsin has so much, right? So much beauty, so much here, all those things that you're talking about, the water, the forest, the farms, we have all these things. And then to suddenly see, wait a minute, who's coming in? What's happening? This is my home. Is that kind of part of it too? That these people or not people, but these companies are not from Wisconsin.
Right.
It's hard to feel like they're acting in Wisconsin's best interest.
Yeah, they don't know us. I think they're the newest invasive species. That's what I think. And because they come in and they first of all they send in hired consultants, salespeople, who are meant to babysit you through a process and to just move you along past your own objections without even recognizing that you didn't get your question answered, right? And get this on and then they're going to say things like, well, yeah, they're against it. I can see that. And I told you they would be, right? That the community was going to get up in arms and they're going to start complaining about water and all that stuff. And that's what they're doing. But you know better, right? You know about our closed loop system and And so they're cozying up to those people and reassuring them that they're the smart ones and their citizens are not. And what you have is just this dynamic that is preventing real conversations from happening. And what you're dealing with these companies is they treat people dismissively. They're friendly, right? But what did they do? They threw Port Washington a couple $1 million to restore that creek area or whatever. You know what I'm talking
Hmm.
about? Like, oh, here, have some loose change for them, right? On a $10 billion project. Here you go. Here's some crumbs. And these are people who, most of the people who are making the decisions for those people aren't setting foot in the state. They're continuing to think of us as flyover. And there's a lot of that. And I think even more so up here, right? We don't have some industrial past that we're yearning to go back to here. We're not still holding out hope that manufacturing is going to become a thing again. We want farming to become a thing again, right? We want family farms to be a thing again. But I think that we've been sitting back here um, watching, watching mom and dad argue in the front seat from the back seat, and and um, and I think that's why people have the mood for being proactive rather than always playing whack-a-mole and on the defensive.
You mentioned the data center in Utah. Obviously, this AI data center kind of avalanche is not just happening in Wisconsin or Minnesota or
Mhm.
Michigan or Iowa. It's happening globally.
Mhm.
Do you get people from other states kind of paying attention to this sort of way that you're going about making partnerships here in Wisconsin and going, helping community after community figure things out?
I've physically had conversations with people from at least 5 other states who have contacted me directly to ask what we're doing or how if we have ideas or how we can help. And I had someone twice in the last 3 weeks reach out to me from Croatia. So yeah, um, this is a worldwide thing. Um, and there's a camaraderie people feel as they're going through this together, and they just want hope. They want someone to just give them, "Here's something you can do. Here's something you might be able to try." Um, because, man, it's discouraging when you feel like your whole, you know, the city government is against you, right? And we're lucky in that when I take from topic to topic. I'm sorry, it's hard for
That's
me.
okay.
Um, when we when this started, people were very, very there was a lot of angry villager energy, and that typically
Yeah,
happens when it comes out of nowhere. But it didn't take me long to recognize that that wasn't going to serve us in the long run. That we were one vote shy of having a veto-proof opportunity, right? And so we needed to just turn a couple people so that if by chance it's got approved that the mayor could veto it and we would be able to overturn it. That's what my mentality was. I don't know how accurate legally I was at the time. Um, but at the same time, Prescott Balch was doing something similar in Caledonia. It's like
right.
we're going to sit down and we're going to who are the people who we can influence, who we think that we can talk to. And so that's what we sat in a meeting. We had a big 60 person meeting in a local brew pub. And out of that meeting, the people who started our Facebook group kind of reached out to a few of us, like about a dozen of us, and scheduled a meeting to try to create kind of a team approach. And in that meeting, I brought this up that someone needs to talk to council members. And they said, "Who wants to do it?" And I said, "I'll do it." And I didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew that the approach um, had to assume their best intentions, and it um, had to be curious rather than confrontational. And there were people who were really defensive at first who within a few minutes kind of loosened up and really started opening up and sharing. And I think that helped us turn the tide because what we have now is we had public officials who listened, right?
Yeah.
But I think they listened because some of us didn't approach them with pitchforks and torches. and didn't assume that they were on the take. I keep laughing about that because it's like half of those people, some like 6 of their neighbors knocked on their door and said, "Will you do it?" to be on the council, and they won, 17-0 in the election or
Right.
whatever it is. Yeah, there's so much there's so much self-benefit there. People just want to serve their community, and they're doing the best they can. And it's easy to say they're not, but none of us knew what was going on last summer, right? None of us did. And you
Yeah,
trust your
and
staff members, and you trust people you think are experts with the limited knowledge even they have.
I think, I on the podcast last year, I talked to someone from Superior, Wisconsin, who's the mayor, who now is against a gas plant in the community, but
Yeah.
initially he was for it.
Mhm.
And he described that feeling of having all these people come in, all these consultants, and they tell you everything, and they tell you all the reasons why you should just go ahead and go along with everything, and it's very, very difficult to say no.
Right.
At this point, I think what you're doing and all the other people who are kind of with you is trying to get ahead of those consultants, basically,
Yeah.
to get to local lawmakers before they get pushed into something
Yeah.
so aggressively.
Yeah. That's exactly what we're trying to do. Because if you're waiting till they sit down with you to negotiate your development deal, you've lost. You're not going to get what you want. These people have better lawyers than you, and they can negotiate something with you that they fully intend to sue about later and take off the agreement anyway. That happens all the time, especially with community benefit agreements. That's a thing where they'll say, "Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that." And then they'll come back and go, "Oh, the statute doesn't really allow for
Huh.
this." Right.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the whole idea. And what's still shocking to me is how, like, I was just talking to someone down in Rock County. I'm not going to get too specific about this because I don't want to call out people that I don't know. But and they're talking about a town administrator who was saying, "Well, just tell us, just make a list of the things you want in the development agreement." Why? So they can be dismissed by you and by the developer, right? Why do you want to negotiate these when all you have to do is adopt the things that you need to adopt? And then the other mistake they make is allowing people to come in and give them the presentation when they haven't figured this out yet, right? What they should be doing is at least doing a stop and study resolution and saying, "Hey, listen, here's something we don't know much about, but here's like the legal rationale. This is whereas data centers this, whereas the risk is this, whereas this, and whereas we don't have enough information about this, we're ordering our staff to take the next 6 months or whatever, 120 days and study this issue, blah, 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 blah." Now you have a legal reason to not have people come in and give presentations, right? And not be engaging with someone who could end up using a casual conversation with you as leverage legally. And that's what people need to do. They need to say, "Okay, we're not going to have these conversations until we prepare ourselves." I think the danger of a state moratorium is that you're only going to have so many communities who take that moratorium and go, "Okay, we know what to do. We're going to do this." And then you have a lot
Mhm.
of other communities who have moratorium because it's a statewide thing who aren't doing anything. And so all they're really doing is becoming targets because they're being noticed as not doing anything. And now they can have a plan to just, when that moratorium ends, boom, here we are. And how are you going to stop us now? So that's the danger with a statewide moratorium in my mind, and why I would really like to see us more organized as a region and have us just have it be like a peer pressure thing, like a positive peer pressure thing.
I will say Clean Wisconsin is calling for a statewide pause
Yeah.
on data center development, but a pause and a plan, like pause
Yeah.
it, and then let's have a statewide plan on
Yeah.
how we are going to keep these things from harming our communities.
Well,
Um,
I think the
and
state, I'm fine with the statewide moratorium. I'm fine with it. I'm just concerned about what the impact could be of the communities who don't do anything. But my bigger concern is that the legislators I've talked to have very little understanding of this issue. And it's very uncomfortable for me to see them kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall with their attempts with some of the legislation, or with them not really digging into the nonpartisan thing and trying to at least really try to come to an agreement with the other side, instead of, because what we see is everyone putting their own energy stuff in it, knowing that the other party's not going to go for it, right? And that happens on both sides. So it's kind of like more like posturing, like we know they're not going to vote for it, and then we can say, well, we tried and they stopped us, and that's just not helpful. If we do a moratorium, then I think the legislators should have to go through some serious training on the subject as well, and better understand it before they meddle too much. Because I'm afraid
I feel like that on a lot of issues.
I feel like they're going to start taking more local control away, is what I'm worried about.
Well, I really appreciate your time on this and all the work that you've been doing. And, I think Wisconsin is in a very different place this year than it was last year, largely because of folks on the ground like you. So, Blaine, thank you so much for talking with me. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for taking the time.
And thank you for listening to The Defender. We have a lot of information about the environmental harms of Wisconsin's AI data centers on our website, and a petition calling for a pause in unchecked AI data center development that will be delivered to all candidates running for governor. Just take a look at the show notes or head to cleanwisconsin.org/podcast. I'm Amy Barrilleaux. Talk to you later.